personal hours this evening. I know there's a football game on, first NFL game, so get on into the presentation and talk a little bit about a very hot topic that is going on here in El Paso County and also City of Colorado Springs. And believe it or not, it's actually a very hot topic throughout the state of Colorado. So, what I want to do is just, I know it's a very heated debate right now, but please take it easy on me. I'm actually 25 years old, so look what this job's done to me. I look like hell. So, but again, thank you so much for coming. So here, and I hope everybody got a copy of the PowerPoint. Folks, on there, I actually put my email address, my desk number, my cell phone number. If you guys have any questions, or if you have neighbors that have any questions regarding, short-term rentals, AirBNB, or what my role and responsibility as county assessor is, please have them reach out to me. You can text me, it goes right to my phone, and I'll reach back out to you. Hey, Blake, lost the mic.
Yeah, you use the handheld to find the lawn.
Okay, is this better? Okay. So, before I begin, several weeks ago I sent out an email to all elected officials here in El Paso County. So to all of our House District representatives, our state senators, and things like that. And I'll share with you the reason why I sent an email out. One thing is, once we go through the presentation and I share with you what's going on and why there's such a big debate with short-term rentals and Airbnbs, hopefully you agree with me that this is a state matter, not a local matter, because we have some outdated laws. Is there any other elected officials here? Okay, I'm not seeing any now, but I do know that some are coming. If I could, I also want to do some staff introductions. Carrie Taylor, who's my deputy administrator, she is joining us this evening. Kevin Price, my residential appraiser manager, he's right over here. Julie Aguilera is my office technologist, so she's here. She's going to be running up and down with the microphone, because I know we're going to have some dialogue here in a little bit. Blake Joel, who's with our public information office, they're back there. So guys, thank you for taking some time doing this. And then Steve Klafke, who is our assistant county attorney. So he is my county attorney for the assessor's office. He's with us here tonight as well. So, I feel it's pretty important to get out and basically start an education piece in regards to what my roles and responsibilities are, and just educate the public on current Colorado law regarding short-term or long-term rentals. And I put together, with the help of some county staff, we're doing some open houses. Of course, today's the first one. Next Tuesday, we're doing another one, and also next Thursday. And we're also going to be doing one down in Fountain. So if you have friends down there that have, rentals down there, short-term rentals, or neighbors down there, I'm going to be down at City Hall down in Fountain as well on September 19th from 6 to 7:30. So what are the objectives in the agenda? First and foremost is to inform about short-term rentals and Airbnbs. Review current Colorado law on short-term, long-term rentals and current case law. Because there's actually current case law that came out in 2018 regarding short-term rentals and Airbnbs. Solicit. I'm all about dialogue. Let's get some input and some good communication going on. So I want to get some inputs from some of our elected officials, property owners, and stakeholders in this matter, and also advise. What is going on here, and Steve, what are your duties as assessor in valuing and classifying these types of properties? So I would like to set some ground rules, because I know this is a very heated topic. First and foremost, if you got a cell phone, I turn mine off, just please put it on silent or vibrate. Please, let's recognize that each person participating here is because they're here because they care about our community. Be respectful and considerate. There's nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree. Hold all questions to the end of the presentation, and we can stay here and answer as many questions as you have. My job is to provide facts. Be careful not to generalize and be concise. So the reason why we're here is basically not talking about city ordinance and things like that. We'll go into a little bit of that. My job is to classify and value property as the El Paso County Assessor. And then please no personal attacks. And finally, let's enjoy the meeting and have a great dialogue, because again, it's those of us that are going to be looking for how do we change the current law where we can all come together. So here's the outline. What I want to talk to you guys about is what are my roles and responsibilities as your elected official. What is the local and state conversations? What's going on with short-term rentals, Airbnbs? What are some rumors? There is a lot of rumors going around that I want to share with you that are going on at the state level right now. Terminology and definitions, I'll provide statutes of what current Colorado law is. The definition of residential and non-residential. I've actually sat down and had several of these presentations, and unfortunately many property owners that are operating short-term rentals or Airbnbs have no idea the difference between residential or non-residential and the ramification that comes with that. And I also want to share some concerns. What is the plan to move forward here in El Paso County, and then basically open it up to discussion and questions. So, what is my roles and responsibilities? First and foremost, I do not work for the City of Colorado Springs. I do not work for the Board of County Commissioners. I work for the taxpayers of El Paso County. So you are my boss. So as mentioned, here is my mission statement. Our mission is to meet or exceed the statutory requirements, rules, and regulations of the state of Colorado in the administration of El Paso County's property assessment and mapping system that is accurate, fair, and equitable to the citizens, and to also serve our customers in a courteous and efficient manner that fosters mutual respect and understanding. So here's my role, and I take this very serious, and my staff and I work extremely hard every day on this. It's very simple. Ensure fair and equitable taxation through fair and equitable valuation. So that's what our role is. What is my responsibility? As your elected assessor, my responsibility can be broken down into 4 categories, which is discover, listing, classifying, and valuing all taxable and exempt property in El Paso County. Anybody want to guess how many parcels we have in El Paso County? Just a guess? Nobody guessing? Over 300,000. We are the largest county in the state of Colorado. I'm in charge of nearly $87 billion of market value here in El Paso County. Pretty significant. And when you have over 300,000 parcels, and here's what I'm most proud of as well, is I have the smallest staffed metro county in the state of Colorado. I got 50 full-time employees, and other metro counties have 60, 70 or more employees. So we do a lot in the assessor's office. They do a fantastic job. So, conversations and rumors. Short-term rental and Airbnb properties have been a topic of conversation and debate at the local and state levels over the past 2 or 3 years. And you guys have probably heard it as well. And again, I am not with the City of Colorado Springs or the City of Fountain or the City of Manitou, the town of Monument or anything like that. But there's a lot of discussion, and you all that are stakeholders are probably following all the change in ordinance through the City of Colorado Springs. Keep in mind, I have nothing to do with that. The ordinances, the permitting, the restrictive use. Here's what I'm looking at is, I think Denver with the restrictive use. Anybody familiar with what's going on up there? So basically in Denver, Colorado right now, if you are a short-term Airbnb owner, you can only have 1 short-term rental and it has to be owner-occupied. You can actually Google this evening. There is a couple and also a lawyer that have been charged with a felony because they found out they were actually operating more than 1 short-term rental. So they are getting extremely restrictive in the city of Denver. And I actually just pulled this up. This is an article in the Denver Post that came out September 4th. Denver short-term rental owners are giving up their licenses rather than risk criminal charges. So right now, as of 1 month, they basically said 154 people have surrendered their licenses. So I will share with you is I feel Denver has basically taken the term of investor or investment from investor, and they are getting extremely restrictive on this. 2019 state legislature. Last year, anybody familiar with the Gallagher Amendment? 1, 2. So I'll just give you a quick 5-minute spiel. Back in 1982, we were going through a tax revolt here in the state of Colorado. Senator Dennis Gallagher at that time recognized that a lot of our senior citizens were walking away from their home because they couldn't pay the taxes. So they were going into voluntary foreclosure, or they were just basically letting it go into treasurer's tax sale. So at that time, Senator Dennis Gallagher recognized the fact hey, we got, lobbyists up here that are, lobbying for farm, ranch, developers, agriculture, oil and gas. Who is lobbying for the single-family residential property owner? At that time, in 1982, the assessment rate for residential and non-residential was 30%. The taxes were crazy. Anybody live here in 1982? The market was unbelievable. Values were going up. So, unfortunately, what was happening with a lot of seniors as values are going up, does this sound familiar what's happening here today? What's happening, values were going up. What was happening to a lot of our seniors' salary? It was not going up. It was stagnant, and they were losing their homes. So he basically pushed and passed the Gallagher Amendment. What this is known as is the 55-45 split. 55% of all property taxes that are paid in by non-residential property owners, commercial, vacant land. 45% is paid in by residential property owners. The Division of Property Taxation every year receives every county, all 64 counties, sales list, and what they do is they review it and basically looking at, are values going up? Do we need to adjust the residential assessment rate? And this is where you have seen over the last 4 years, our assessment rate has gone from 7.96% down to 7.2%. This year, for tax year 2019 and 2020, it dropped down to 7.15%. The reason why that is being reduced is to get us to that 45%. Here's the sad fact. The non-residential rate is 29%. It's fixed. It does not move. The only one that fluctuates like a bobber in a lake is the residential assessment rate, and that's why we're here at 7.15%. So I share this with you because this was a debate at the state capitol last year. Because there are rural counties that are experience budget cuts because they're not seeing a very hot market like we are here along the Front Range. So the state was sitting there looking at, do we charge short-term rentals, AirBNBs, commercially? And that additional revenue would sit there and make up for the loss with the reduction in the residential assessment rate. So that was a conversation that was going on, which failed. So I do see that getting proposed again this year. So, and that's one thing that I'm just going to sit there and keep my ear to the ground of what is going to be going on. Here's the other thing, is when we went into a real estate collapse in 2008, 9, 10, shouldn't have that rate come up? When values go down, the rate should have came up. Anybody want to know why it does not come up? Tabor. Taxpayer Bill of Rights. It is now considered a tax increase to increase the residential assessment rate. Who in the world is going to vote for that? So here in the state of Colorado, we got 2 constitutional amendments that are butting heads with one another. And so that rate will never come up, which these rural counties are going to see permanent reductions, in services and things like that. So as you see here, from 2003 to 2016, the residential rate was at 7.96%. In 2017, 2018, it was at 7.2%. Then for tax year 2019 and 2020, it is at 7.15%. Based on the sales that I still continually see coming in, folks, my office is busy. We're working between 125 to 150 deeds a day in my titles and deeds department. There's a lot of things going on, and still people are paying top dollar for these properties. But what I'm seeing is this rate possibly will come down once more for tax year 2021 and 2022. So, what are the rumors? Possible CCI bill. I've actually heard that there's a commissioner, and basically CCI stands for County Commissioners. And it's an organization like Colorado Assessor Association, CAA. So all 64 county assessors belong to the Colorado Assessor Association, where all of our county commissioners belong to CCI. CCI, there's a commissioner down there who is looking at if you are leasing or renting your property for 60 days, not consecutive, 60 days total, then you should be charged non-residential rate. Here's some concerns I have with that. As assessor, and I'm in charge of classifying and valuing these types of properties, how am I going to verify that? So, basically what it is, it's another unfunded mandate that is passed down to the assessor's office. We as taxpayers are going to have to pay for that. How much staff, what's the work that is going to go into that? So there's some major concerns that I have with that. But I will tell you that is a rumor that's going around. CCI is actually looking at coming up with some bills. And a lot of times it's the mountain counties right now that are trying to push for these types of properties to be valued as commercial. So terminology and definitions. What is the current Colorado law? So per statute 39-1-102, long-term or extended stay is property leased or rented for 30 consecutive days or longer by the same person or business entity. So the examples of these include apartment complexes, duplexes, triplexes. If you're leasing out your home, you sign a 6-month lease, a 1-year lease. So according with current statute, it stays at the residential assessment rate. Short-term stay, in accordance with current Colorado law, is property leased or rented for less than 30 consecutive days by the same person or entity. These examples include hotels, motels, bed and breakfast properties. All of these types of properties are valued non-residential. So, per Colorado revised statute, long-term or extended stay properties are current valued at the residential assessment rate. I just did an example here where you can go through the math. If you have a $300,000 property, at the residential assessment rate of 7.15%, the estimated taxes on that with a mill levy of 75 mills are about $1,600 a year. You change that same property, $300,000 property, to non-residential commercial, it quadruples the taxes to about $6,500 a year. And that's based on an average mill levy of about 75 mills. I know some of these properties here in El Paso County, we got a lot of special districts, metro districts. There's some neighborhoods that are over 100 to 125 mills. Those taxes would probably be about 9-10 grand a year. So, I'm going to take some time here. We'll get to questions here today. Here are some of my concerns. I've received phone calls from stakeholders and property owners going, Steve, it's not zoned commercial. My home is zoned residential. However, Colorado is a value in use state, which means we value the property, we have nothing to do with zoning. We value the property based on its use. Here's a great example. You own 30 acres out east, and you have a tiny home on there, and it's zoned agriculture. However, you're not being valued as agriculture because you're not growing meadow hay or you're not grazing it, things like that. Another great example I want to share with you, anybody familiar with Colorado Avenue and a lot of those residential properties that go from residential to commercial, back to residential to commercial? Basically, those are the types of properties that go back and forth from residential to commercial because we are a value and use state. So all 64 counties, based on our assessment date of January 1, how that property is being used, is how we value it for that entire year. So it's a value and use, it has nothing to do with zoning. I'm extremely concerned with HOA covenants, county and city zoning. I have received phone calls from folks that are just not popular, with the idea of short-term rentals in their neighborhood. So they've actually talked about restarting the covenants that have been put away for years and years and years, restarting an HOA, things like that. But here in El Paso County, many of us moved into neighborhoods to get away from government, to get away from the HOAs, to get away from the covenants and things like that. Knowledge of business owners and stakeholders. I feel a large percentage of business owners that are running short-term rentals or AirBNBs, stakeholders have no idea what in the world we're talking about tonight. I think they just basically looked at it going, you know what, this is some pretty easy money. We got a lot of people that are visiting El Paso County, City of Colorado Springs. They have no idea about all this stuff that we're talking about tonight. So this is the reason why I'm doing these open houses and will continue to do so for quite some time because I think education is key. Issues with lenders. This is one of my biggest concerns. When we all buy a property, we all sign an affidavit saying we're going to be using this property as a single-family residential property. The concern I have is we are in a very unique community here in El Paso County. And the reason why we're unique, we have a lot of active duty military, a lot of veterans. And, unfortunately, a lot of these active duty military go overseas to Iraq, Afghanistan, things like that. I did the same thing when I was in the United States Marine Corps. Or you get stationed and they basically turn the property over to a property manager and say, you know what, we want to retire here, but, we're going to turn over to a property manager and we're going to run it as a short-term rental Airbnb. VA does not lend on commercial property. So the VA FHA looked at this and they sit there going, why did the taxes go from $1,600 a year to $7,000 a year? Would the lender call the note? That is a huge concern. I feel, as your county assessor, is if one of our residents actually lost their property, I failed at my job. There's a lot of homework that needs to be done on this. Increased utility rates. When you go from residential to non-residential, you're going to be paying commercial rates and utilities. Increased homeowners insurance. Many of the property owners I talk to are like, Steve, I just got regular homeowners insurance. Our homeowner insurance does not know that I'm running this as a commercial business. So that is definitely going to change. Subject to the business personal property tax. Anybody familiar with the business personal property tax here in the state of Colorado? This is a tax on furniture, fixtures, and equipment associated with a business. So in a short-term rental, when you got beds, dressers, stove, refrigerator, that is all taxed as business personal property. And so that's an additional tax burden, but I will tell you this. I will share with you, I hate this tax. I feel it's double taxation because when somebody buys it at Lowe's or they buy that, furniture someplace else, they're already paying a sales tax on that. But now they have to pay a business personal property tax forever until they close that business up. So, that is one thing. Right now, the current exemption for tax year 2019 is if the actual value of your equipment in that property is $7,700 or less, you're exempt. We don't need to know anything about it. But if you've got a hot tub, things like that, that is subject to business personal property tax. I will share with you, El Paso County is the only county in the state of Colorado that does not levy against business personal property. What that means is the monies that are supposed to come to county government from personal property tax is given back to these property owners as a business tax credit. And also the city of Colorado Springs 2 years ago basically said we're no longer collecting on business personal property. So we're the only county and city in the state of Colorado where the county and city give those monies back. However, I'm still responsible for discovering, listing, classifying, and valuing this property because there are monies that do go to the school districts, fire districts, and things like that. Property valuation, Tabor Amendment. We talked about that. We as voters voted in the Tabor Amendment in 1992. Here's what that did. That really changed things for county assessors in the state of Colorado. As a licensed appraiser here in the state of Colorado, I can sit there and value your property using a cost, market, and income approach. When Tabor was voted in, I can only use the sales comparison market approach when valuing residential property. But on non-residential, I can use the cost, market, and income. Herein lies my concern. We convert these properties to non-residential. I'm now able to use the cost, market, and income approach on these types of properties. The concern I have is you own a property in an area where the median value is $250,000, but you are doing extremely well, and based on your income, the property value is $400,000. Do you see the problem that you're seeing there as far as an outlier? How many people, if you were to go sell that property, would actually come to your house and go, yeah, we want to go ahead and pay $400,000 for that property? So what's happening is you would actually have government limiting the number of potential buyers for your property. The other thing is vice versa, is if you had a bad year and we were using the income and we valued at a low value. So, there's a lot of concerns that I have there. That's where I just go into the loss of potential buyer pool. When you have government that's basically, using the cost, market, or income approach, and you're valuing it based on your income, and when you go to sell that property and on the assessor records it's saying it's worth $400,000, you're sitting there looking at, no one's going to go up to that. They're going to go look at a house down the road that's the same model for $250,000. Payment of taxes. When you go to sell, we've all bought property, usually do the proration. From January to June, the seller will sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pay the taxes from January to June. You pick it up from July through December 31st when you close on the house June 30th. How many buyers are going to sit there and basically pay $7,000 in taxes when they're buying that house to be a single-family residential property and not operated as an AirBNB? So Herein lies another problem where you're going to have a limited buyer pool, where folks are going to be going, we're not going to be paying those taxes. We're going to go to a different house that's on the market down the road. And they'll also see that on public record, in the assessor site and also on the treasurer site when they see those taxes. So therein lies a huge concern that I have. My responsibilities. As mentioned a couple minutes ago, folks, again, my job that you have entitled me to, that you blessed me with to be your assessor, is to discover, list, classify, and value all taxable and exempt property in El Paso County. How am I supposed to find these types of properties? They're not like a regular business. They don't have signage. So I cannot guarantee fair and equitable assessment when I can't sit there and locate these types of properties. So, I definitely have a concern there ensuring fair and equitable assessments countywide. State assessment date. Guys, I'll let you know the secret. The state assessment date is January 1st of each and every year. What is your use of the property on January 1? So if I were to pick these properties up as non-residential, and a property owner got their notice of value, which I sent, I think many here got my love letter I sent to you last May 1. But what would happen is that property owner has a right to appeal. And they would come on in and just say, Steve, I didn't use this as an Airbnb as of January 1. By our current law, I have to convert it back to residential based on our assessment date of January 1. So who is it of me to sit there and say otherwise to the property owner that you are not utilizing this as of January 1 as a short-term rental Airbnb? Do I go search websites? Do I go and take a look at stuff? So you see where this is going. Impacts. Most definitely, would there be a possible loss of jobs? Converting these properties to non-residential and taxes going up? Tourism, a local economic hit? That's one thing as well. I talked to some property owners and they're going, Steve, I would basically really look at just not even doing short-term rentals or Airbnb. Which means there's a house cleaner or a maintenance person that comes around that are just going to be laid off and things like that. Or I'm just going to up my rates. What does that do for the tourism that is coming into El Paso County? Because I actually looked in economic, anybody know where we're rated in the state of Colorado as far as tourism? We're top 3, which really surprised me because I was all, going Vail, Aspen, Breckenridge, things like that. But in fact, I think we're going to be climbing the ladder. And with the things, going on with the new stadium downtown, with the Olympic Museum going on downtown, the visitor center at the Air Force Academy, there's a lot of great things happening here in El Paso County that is bringing the tourism in. And so I think we're going to be going, up the ladder in those rankings. The other thing is, what are the impacts on my staff in my office? Keep in mind, it's your tax dollars that pay our salary and also provides me with a budget. What are the impacts of trying to discover these types of properties? What are the additional tax dollars that's going to be required to do that? And then on VRBOs, I brought Steve here with me a little bit, and maybe he can go into it a little bit, but there's actually a current court case, and it's called O'Neill versus Conejos County. And you can actually pull this up, or if you want a copy of this, email me. I will shoot you a copy of this court case. So here's what happened. In 2017, the assessor down in Conejos County picked up whatever she knew down there as far as Airbnbs, VRBOs, short-term rentals. And it was really a shotgun approach at that time. It's like, you know what, I'm only picking up the ones that I know of, the ones that I don't know. Again, it wasn't being fair and equitable to everybody. Well, the property owner at that time, it was an owner-occupied property where he leased out his basement as a short-term rental. He appealed the assessor's decision as far as it being non-residential. She denied it. He took it on to the next level, to the County Board of Equalization. They denied it. So he has another avenue. He could go to district court. So Mr. O'Neill took it to district court. He won. Based on the premise that the use of the property was primary use was single-family residential. He lived in it. So anyways, the assessor appealed it. So they went to the appellate court. The appellate court went with Mr. O'Neill. So we right now have current court case basically saying if it's owner occupied, if they're renting out a bedroom or a basement or anything like that, it stays residential because the primary use is residential property. So therein lies another concern is what's the difference between owner-occupied, not owner-occupied? So there's major concerns there. So what is the plan to move forward here in El Paso County? First and foremost, folks, I'm a very proactive, not a reactive type of guy. I will share with you, I do apologize for the article that came out because, basically it got a lot of attention, and I'm glad because we need to start having this type of discussion, but it was never my intent to start picking these things up as non-residential. So the thing is, as you read through that story, many of those concerns that I have on that slide were actually highlighted in that article. And as somebody, as an elected official here in El Paso County, it would be very premature of me to sit there and change these properties over when I feel we as a community really need to do our homework on this. There is a lot of unanswered questions. So first and foremost, what's the plan to move forward in El Paso County? Educate. Getting out there, talking to the property owners, talking to stakeholders, talking to community members in regards to what we're talking about tonight. I truly feel that this is a state matter, not a local matter. The law needs to change because we're talking about a statute that came into effect over a decade ago, but guess what? A decade ago, were any of us talking about short-term rentals or AirBNBs? So the state has not kept up with the changes that we're seeing in our housing community. Another example is, what about tiny homes? That's a new thing. So, tiny homes. So when you sit there and you look at who values a tiny home if it's on a trailer? Do they pay the taxes through the Department of Motor Vehicles if it's tagged? Because a lot of these tiny homes, you can just hook it up to an Outback and just drive it wherever and put it someplace. So you see where I'm going with this, is basically I feel the state has not basically kept up with the changes that we're seeing in our communities with housing. My thought is propose new 2020 legislation. And I've already reached out, as I mentioned, to a number of elected officials, well, all of them, all of our House District reps here in El Paso County, and also all of our state senators. We've had some side conversations, but we need to be very, very careful when you propose legislation. And I will tell you that here's the reason why, is what you put in the meat grinder, it comes out the back, can be something totally bad, and it can be extremely harmful to either a neighborhood or a property owner or a stakeholder. This is why we just need to have these types of conversations. Be proactive and not reactive. Here's what that means. Step back. We're not doing anything here in El Paso County. There are a lot of unanswered questions here in El Paso County. And folks, this just is not an El Paso County matter. This is a state matter. I will tell you, there are a handful of assessors that have picked up these properties as non-residential. And I actually talked to a property owner going, Steve, why is my tax bill in this county much larger than this one here? And it's because they're being picked up as non-residential. So even your elected assessors, 64 county assessors, are not being fair and equitable throughout the state. That in lies a problem as well. So my job is to step back, review concerns, also talk about other concerns. Some of the other concerns I have is our senior citizens. I have talked to probably 10, 11, or 12 senior citizens in our community whose income is not going up, but their property is and their taxes are. And they're sitting there basically using their home as a short-term rental, or they have an adjacent home next, on their property on the west side that they're renting out just to help out to pay the mortgage. I'm an individual that's all about aging in place. And when you start taxing and putting, people out of their homes is a bad thing. So we need to review and do a lot of our homework. And, I just finished it off with timeout. So with that being said, man, I did that in a half hour. Holy crap. So I think right now, I think the best thing is, let's have some dialogue. Let's open some questions. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna have some water here.
I'm just going to represent that last group of people, the senior citizens. I'm 65, and I will lose my house if I don't have the short-term. Long-term rentals can't pay enough to pay my mortgage, my property taxes take 1/12 of my entire income. So if you bring that up, say from that 116 to, I will lose my house. So I am definitely the one that you will make me lose my house if you turn me into a commercial, and that to me is why on my back am I paying all those taxes? And Doug Bruce, who has houses in the neighborhood that have drug addicts that are the dangerous place, he doesn't pay. And me, who lives in poverty level, I don't have your salary. I don't get that. I'm not your 50 employees that have that. This is something that I can do, and I've held onto my house for the last 4 years. My partner separated from me. So just know that you said I don't want to take anyone out of their houses. I'm one of those that if it changes, and I do live in my house, and I am not comfortable with somebody living there full time. AirBNB verifies and checks everyone that comes in, and I do not feel safe with somebody in there and that I can't get out. So
I sincerely appreciate you sharing your personal story. And again, that is something that's near and dear to my heart, because if you're 65 years or older, you're probably eligible if you've lived in your home for 10 years or more for the senior homestead exemption, in which I promote the heck out of. But it has to be residential property, absolutely. So that is a concern that I just wanted to share with you, is seniors that are in your situation that are currently in the senior homestead exemption, they would drop out of the exemption. So they would actually lose that benefit as well. That is a major concern. I share that with you. Right. And so I tell you, that is a major concern, and this is why we're not doing anything here in El Paso County. I will share with you as well, I do feel that if government should not be in the position to put businesses out of business. There are things that need to sit there and look at its land use, code enforcement, just a number of different things. But there are concerns that I've been thinking about a lot, one of which is our seniors. And I will tell you is, if I were the one to sit there and make this change, and you lost your home, I failed in my duties as assessor. So, right. That's why we're not moving forward. And these are conversations I will share with you. This is why we need to have these conversations with all elected officials here in El Paso County, and that's why I wanted to start these types of conversations, because absolutely, that is a very good point. Is you would absolutely lose your senior homestead exemption. You would lose your house, then you would have to start that 10-year clock over. Yes, ma'am.
So I too am in that senior category, and I lived in Arvada and it was way too expensive, so I sold and I moved into a home here where I had the opportunity to make it into an Airbnb, and I read the laws wrong, and I got a letter stating I needed to license the Airbnb, so I went ahead and did all that, and everything's above board, and yet if I lose the ability, I live in my house, I live in more than 3/4 of my house, and only rent out a small portion with always lovely people. I just had a couple that came from another country who had never visited the United States, and they were just thrilled to have had the opportunity to have had a personalized home to be able to come to instead of the other options. And I don't understand how this is any different than having a part-time job. I heard the comment that somewhere along the line that people think this is an easy thing to do. It's not that easy to get up there every day and make beds and vacuum and dust and make sure the bathrooms are clean. Get on my hands and knees and do the bathroom floors, because that's the way I was raised. This is my job. What's the difference whether I work at Walmart and stand in the door and make, some money every hour, or choose to rent out my home that I am responsible for and keep in very high standards? And if anybody were to abuse my home, they would be out the door. So I am very passionate about this, and I'm trying to keep it low. And I appreciate what I'm hearing from you, because it sounds like you are for us, and I appreciate that. I'm very disillusioned with the government.
You know, my mom was a stay-at-home mom of 9 kids. Every day I saw her vacuuming, dusting, mopping, and things like that. Absolutely, it was, it was a job. But I will tell you this is I do feel it's infringing on private property rights as well. What you do with your property is what you do with your property. But I will share with you is, just listening to several of you talking, is you're talking about owner-occupied property. Keep in mind the current case law that's out there, O'Neill versus Conejo County. There's current case law that says the assessor cannot pick up a short-term rental or AirBNB in owner-occupied property. So you already have current case law that is on your side. Right now, the ones that we're sitting there looking at is what do we do for not owner-occupied property. So, that's just one thing. But again, my job as your county assessor is to keep my ear to the floor and find out, is there anything going to be coming up? Any rumors regarding possible legislation regarding owner-occupied or owner-occupied? So right now, I would not be able to change the classification of your property based on that case law. But you're right. I feel it's like what you're doing in your home, you should be doing in your home. Yes, ma'am.
So, we also own our house, but we live up in Monument
Okay.
on 5 acres. And you said the actual tax rate decreased this year,
The assessment rate.
but ours increased about $400. And our actual property didn't increase in value according to it being appraised from last year to this year. I know you can fight that and send in, but it also, we heard that if you do that, it hurts your potential sale in the future.
That's not true.
Okay.
Not at all.
Well, and the other part is that we also own an Airbnb in Palm Desert, and they just went through the whole owner occupied, that you only could be an owner occupied.
Yep.
They eliminated all the other residential because of the issues that they were having that I've heard from others here. And they also put in place restrictions from the city where you only can have the same number of people stay at your house that you have beds for. You can't just unlimited we only can have 2 cars. We can't have 10. So there's other restrictions in place. And so it seems like that's a good go-between for especially those people who live in Colorado Springs. We haven't had the same problems because we're in Monument and, live in the middle. So we certainly don't want our property taxes to raise again, especially since we live in a house.
Well, and let me address, I got 2 questions from that, and I'll address the first one, which is your personal property value up in Monument. Ma'am, absolutely. If you don't agree with my opinion of value, and that's what comes out in notice value, trust me, my wife does not agree with my opinion many times. And that's what a definition of appraisal is. It's an opinion of value. You know your property way better than I do, or Kevin, who's my residential manager. I always sit there and say, guys, look at appealing your property, and here's why. In an assessor's office, we do mass appraisal. And so basically in El Paso County, and this is something I'm extremely proud of, in El Paso County, we had less than 1% of our total parcels appeal this year. And, based on the sales, I raised values in some neighborhoods 25, 30, 35%. That's based on the sales. Again, your assessor does not determine the market. The market is determined between a willing buyer and a willing seller. So what happens is we do 2 reappraisals here in El Paso County, one of which is the old-fashioned way. We derive the sales out of a neighborhood or a subdivision, and we make adjustments based on those sales of square footage, how many garages, how many bedrooms, baths, things like that. And now we do it also a very high-tech way which is called MRA, multiple regression analysis, and I don't want to get too techie here, but it's a very statistical approach. Here's the reason why I do this. I run it the old-fashioned way, and I run it under multiple regression analysis. The reason I do that is then I match the values up, and believe it or not, once you run those two together, the values are usually off by 1 or 2%. As your assessor, what does that tell me? We got some pretty good values here. And so, it makes me feel good that we're setting good values. We had 5,500 appeals out of 300,000 parcels. I was extremely happy about that, but I went out in the community and I was talking to folks about it. So when you're talking about it may hurt you for resale if you appeal your value, absolutely not. Here's the thing, when you go to sell your house, you're selling it at current market value. The sales that we used for the 2019 reappraisal occurred in 2016 and 2018. We're using 2-year-old data. So lenders or appraisers or brokers are not using assessor data because we're 2 years behind. So we're already working on the 2021 reappraisal because we're looking at the sales that occurred from July 1 of 2018, taking it all up to June 30th of 2020. So we're already in arrears. So again, you have every right to appeal. If you do not agree with the value of the property, and if you did not appeal, you still reserve the right to appeal being abated once the tax bill comes out January 1. I highly recommend you give me a call. The other thing is talking about, your concern regarding the ordinances, just a number of different things that are coming down, permitting and things like that. Keep in mind, that's not my job. That is with the city or the town of Monument, things like that. You have a lot of municipalities where you have, city council members that we all elect. These are individuals that are coming up with these new ordinances within the city, Manitou, things like that. My job is to ensure fair and equitable taxation through fair and equitable valuation. That's it. I have nothing to do with the permitting, the ordinance, or anything like that. Absolutely. So, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Davis. I'm actually a transplant from the city of Boston. I moved here last year.
Welcome, man.
Thank you very much. Boston went through some very draconian short-term rental laws that went into effect coincidentally with the launching of the gigantic Wynn Hotel nearby. I've sat through several of these meetings in the past. I've sat through these meetings with AirBNB representatives from the company, from VRBO, and with some very large men from the hotel industry, representing the hotel industry. Typically what you find in this meeting is there are a few people that come in and they say that short-term rentals are destroying the community. They're destroying their ability to rent property at fair rates. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. What I see here, or what I've heard so far, and what I've received from testimonials from other people, are people that are adding value to their home, adding value to the neighborhood. You're bringing in people on a short-term basis that are screened by another company. If there are problems, you handle those problems. I cannot tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars that I personally lost from having regular tenants. So I have probably a coin flip whether or not a tenant is going to pay me. And that comes out of my pocket. That means that my kid can't go to Catholic school, right? So I was very pleased with the short-term rental laws out here. I guess I'm having difficulty with the concept that if you do a short-term rental, then your property is now valued at 4 times its amount. Whereas if I were to go and sell that property a year after I bought it, it would probably be worth maybe 7.5% higher than when I bought it, right? Not 4 times the amount. So what I hope that this is not the case, but my mind jumps immediately to this is either a punitive action or it is a preventative action to protect the hotel industry and make it unpalatable for short-term rental owners, right? Because I think that there's a better way to get tax revenue from the profits that are made on short-term rentals than increasing someone's property value by 4 times when there's not a corresponding increase in value in the market.
You bring up some very good points. First, welcome to our community, man.
Thank you.
And absolutely.
I love it here. My mom just turned 65 and she said, "When are you coming back?" And I said, "Mom, I'm not coming back."
Yeah. Well, when you probably get your first tax bill here in Colorado, you're going, wait a minute, what's going on? You know, because I know how they are in Boston. You know what, though? That is a great segue. I want to introduce Mr. Welling Clark. Some of you here in the room may know Welling. You know, he was involved with the legislation some time ago, and I'll let him go into that in regards to the definition of short-term rental, long-term rental. He and his wife, Sally, own a bed and breakfast here on the west side. And so, you know, Welling, would you like to speak a little bit?
Thank you, Steve. I want to share with you something that happened over 35 years ago when we started our property. We're in our 34th year of operation. And the B&B industry was brand new. And what happens is, as technology changes, so do industries. And we had the B&B wave come in, and now due to the internet and some of these technologies, we're having the short-term rentals come in. And I want to thank you for what you cited up there about what your job is and then who's in charge of things and who authorizes where there are or not, and the dilemma you are placed in, because you're trying to follow law. And what I would recommend is this, is that industries are going to evolve. This is the new segment of the lodging industry. And I remember trying to change it back when I served on the Colorado Hotel and Lodging Association to bring the B&B industry into that so there wasn't a conflict back and forth and there was an equitable aspect of that type of a business usage per se. Some of the properties we had to jump through hoops, on-street parking paid, a lot of other variances, things like that. I would like to leave with you that you can never stop the evolution of an industry. But what you're doing right now will lay the groundwork, because we're going to have the same question come up in a different format in about 10 to 20 years. And I know when you're doing an evolving industry, we founded the State Trade Association after we started our bed and breakfast because there was nothing there. We helped establish 3 laws for the B&B industry. I like your proactive style, because the worst we could ever have in any industry is a knee-jerk reaction by the state. And that's what's happened in some other areas. And so a good healthy dialogue, I like that. I do like the equity. One of the things that this is in place there may have some, this is some information I can pass on to folks here. Steve has been very fair with us. I have some Victorian houses, and the ones that nobody lives in, they're taxed at 29 mils, commercial rates. And we met all the requirements that a hotel had to meet for parking, on-street, things like that. But I'm very pleased you're doing proactive, because we won't like what is handed down to us, and it's better for us to be up there. And and one of the things too that I see is, you brought this up, and thank you, is that if you have an issue with it at a house that's a short-term rental, and the insurance company finds out about it, they will disallow it most of the time. And then you're stuck with the bill. One of the things that hasn't come about, and it's just hit our industry, is we're having small lodging properties, bed and breakfast, some of the motels that have websites, they're being sued by ADA because the website is not ADA compliant. Now, there is a loophole in ADA for what is a commercial property and a place of non-commercial property, or place of non-public accommodation. And it's a single structure, 5 rooms or less. This was as of 7 years ago. 5 rooms or less, of which the proprietor, which is the prominent owner in the majority, resides in that property. And so a lot of folks will kind of fall under that, but those that are going up, one of the things I've seen as a neighborhood president on the west side for 12 years, we've had issues where I have a duplex. They just converted both garages into bedrooms, and they're saying they can sleep 14 people in each unit, and they have hardly any off-street parking. That's a bad neighbor. There are other vacation rentals out here that are good neighbors. And so that's not your jurisdiction. But some of the things like what Steve charges us, what is our home, is at the residential rate, and what we use exclusively for the B&B is at that commercial rate. So this may actually help us out with one of our houses. But it's going to happen, it's coming. We're going to be going through this again in 10 to 20 years, so what you lay now as the groundwork is very valuable. And I just want to say I learned a lot of information today, but equity comes into play because I'm doing short-term vacation, I employ a lot of people, I can actually shut my bed and breakfast down and go to short-term rentals and save a lot of money, but I'll be laying people off, means I don't have eyes on the property. The folks that do daily cleaning and everything like that, good for them on that because their eyes on target. But then the only thing I know I do different is we serve breakfast in the morning. And I told guests to have a great time because they're going to have great breakfast. I have nothing to do with the cooking, okay? But this industry is coming down. It's not going away. And this industry needs to harness and come into play with the rest of the lodging industry. So I'm not sure how you do it equitable. What I'm hearing here is the people that live in their homes and everything, with that ruling right there are okay. What I was seeing as a neighborhood president is I was seeing investors buying multiple properties, flipping them, reducing the housing market, the affordable housing market, and going that route. But we established 3 laws for the B&B industry. The food service, we worked with them for 3 years, got it passed. We worked with the state assessors back in '93 on the state level because this is that issue. It's the same thing, the same template, just a little bit different. And then the third thing was, oh God, gray cells, I forgot. No, but
I think.
I'll shut up right there.
It was owner occupied or owner occupied.
Right.
Because on bed and breakfast, folks, for bed and breakfast, we actually separate out the commercial square footage, non-residential, and what's being rented out and things like that. So what Welling's talking about is on some bed and breakfast where they're mixed use, they're both classified as, that same property is classified as residential and non-residential. We just separate out the square footage. So that's the number 3. Willie, I'm glad you brought up the point as far as being fair and equitable. And that's why we're sitting here having this discussion today. That's what the main job of an assessor is. And, I also just want to sit there and introduce one of our new assessors from Teller County, Cole Simmons, who just got elected. So he's a junior guy. He's going through the same thing up there in Teller County. I just noticed you come on in. Welcome, Cole. Yeah. So, he's dealing with the same thing. And this was a very hot topic of our summer conference, for all county assessors. And the reason why, as I mentioned an hour ago, is the concern we have is the discovery of these types of properties. It's extremely hard. And let's say we did pick these properties up as non-residential. How many of you think are going to go underground? A lot. They're going to sit there and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to sit there and comply with this. I'm going underground. That assessor will never even know. So basically what it is basically, the government's pushing these property owners to do business underground, which is not the right thing to do. As I mentioned, and through this conversation, is please keep in mind what I had up there. Guys, we're not doing anything here in El Paso County. We're not doing a thing. I feel we all in this room, the folks that I meet next Tuesday, the folks I meet Thursday, the folks that I've met with at different dialogues, I've already met with the Pikes Peak Association Realtors, I'm meeting with folks in Fountain. We all collectively need to put these ideas together and figure this out because, Welly came up with a good point. I don't want the state shoving something down our throat and I don't want to be Devin Colorado.
I'm Bill Brown, Forrest.
Hi, Bill, how are you?
Fine. I don't have a problem with residents renting the property out to go on vacation for another couple. I have a problem with I'm not sure what to call it, the house across the street from me
Yeah.
that is not owner occupied. He has 8 of these things going. He has weddings. He can sleep 28 people in his place. They have an outside fire pit. Like I said, Black Forest, we still have trees. Smoke in the air, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it because he still comes under the same law. I don't see as an assessor how you can't make him commercial. I realize you don't do code enforcement,
Right.
but he gets away with it. Around the corner, there's another guy that's house burnt the same time as the Black Forest fire, but not in the Black Forest fire. He took a 3,000 square foot house and built a 15,000 square foot residence. He lives there, but he rents it out to weddings and major things. I have pictures of cars up and down the street that the fire department couldn't make a right-hand turn to get into somebody that's on hospice because he has all these cars parked on the street.
Bill, you bring up a good point, but if somebody is operating a venue like that, how are they different from, guys, I'm thinking of that hotel in Manitou, the Cliff House, that hosts weddings. You know, what about different venues and things like that? Because if you're operating that as a venue and you are leasing the property out for a major commercial purpose, which is a wedding or a graduation party, things like that, to me that is deemed as commercial because you're renting it out for a venue purpose. And that's something we just, you know, have to definitely take a look at. But again, it comes down to the discovery of, you know, of those properties. But again, I'm not the land use guy, you know, in the county because I've actually heard from concerned citizens of the past, you know, folks up in Black Forest, folks in Palmer Lake, you know, and I'm not the land use or code enforcement guys, but I will tell you this, you guys got my direct number. I can put you in the person of contact who's in charge of those departments. And I'll tell you this, is I'm not a fan of getting the government runaround where it's like, you know, Steve, I've called these people and I've talked to this person. I don't go to the person that answers the phone. I go to the director and I'll put you in direct contact with them, and just so that way you can share your concern.
I just don't like 28 people spending the weekend in my neighborhood.
The concern
Every weekend.
The concern I have there is what is the code for a number of residents within a single-family residential property. So what is the occupancy code for that property? That is one thing to be considered. The other thing is, I wonder how the fire marshal up there would feel about that. That would be a big, did you talk to them?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And that was part of the problem with the cars on the street. Actually, during that time, when I
Right.
talked to them and said, take your fire truck down that street and just see if you can get down there.
Right.
There is a litigation against the guy that's doing that right now. It's in-
Yeah. You know, and I think,
because of that, but the other guy getting away with it because he's around the corner.
I'm sorry you're going through that situation, but I will tell you, talking to some of these short-term rental property owners, I've actually met some really, really nice people that are actually in this business. And I've heard stories. I actually went and spoke to a group, and some of you may be aware, know them. It's called the Colorado Springs Short-Term Rental Alliance Group. They got about 600 to 700 members. And they got a pretty dang good Facebook page and website that keeps you up to speed of what's going on with the city of Colorado Springs, the different ordinances and things like that. I think they do it the right way. They reach out to their neighbors and they just, you know, they sit there and they say, hey, if you have a problem, here's my cell phone number, please call me. I mean, I've actually heard some stories where at Christmas time they go around to the neighbors and hand them, you know, gift cards and say, thank you for allowing me to operate this business, but I do know that's not the story for many property owners. But again, if there's an issue, you're more than welcome to call me and I'll put you in direct contact with the county code enforcement, planning and development, so I do know those directors directly.
Can you give us the name of that group?
It's called Colorado Springs Short-Term Rental Alliance. They have a Facebook page and a website. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hello, so my name is Sherry Schwager.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi. I started a bed and breakfast in Cascade 17 years ago. My property is zoned residential topographical. And so my land use allows a 2-room bed and breakfast to be operated. And if I wanted to use more than 2 of the rooms in my owner-occupied bed and breakfast, I had to apply for a variance. So I went through the variance process, which cost me $5,000 to do. I sent certified letters to all of my neighbors to gain their support and permission to operate my business, and I was able to do that. There were health department issues that had to be addressed. I had to put a new septic system into my property to accommodate the guests that were staying with me, which cost $18,000. My guest rooms are assessed at a 29% rate based on the square footage. And I want to know from a fair and equitable standpoint how my business, other than serving breakfast, is any different than an AirBNB that's owner occupied. I mean, I will be the first one to say that what I'm in is the travel and tourism business. My competition are hotels, motels, Airbnbs, and vacation rentals. We provide lodging on a short-term basis to people who are traveling and are tourists in the area. We are commercial businesses, and when these businesses are in residential neighborhoods, they have an impact on the people who call that home. The people who live there, the people that work there, the people that want peace and quiet at night. Now, as an owner, I'm really respectful to that. But there are properties in my community that are operating just like this one in Black Forest. They're investor-owned. They're sometimes owned by one owner. Sometimes one owner owns multiple properties. In Cascade, the last time I looked, there are over 100 vacation rental by owners that can accommodate over 600 guests. That's the equivalent of 3 hotels. And this is all happening unregulated in residential neighborhoods. These are commercial businesses, and they're impacting the people that are around them. And so I hear everything that you're saying, but I don't see this as being fair and equitable to businesses like mine or residents that are in the community that are dealing with these commercial properties in their neighborhood. I see this as an opportunity for solution, but it has to be addressed. There are communities in the state of Colorado who have lost their schools because there are so many vacation rentals that they outnumber the people who actually live and work in the community. They artificially inflate the real estate price, which a resident is going to end up paying in their taxes each year because their property value is getting we have a tight real estate market. So when a homeowner is competing with a VRBO investor for a property, and they're losing out on multiple offers because they're being outbid, they're raising artificially our property values. There are a lot of negative impacts that are coming out of this. Schools are being closed because there aren't enough kids that live in the communities to support this. So I have a lot of concerns that I would like to see addressed, and I don't think this should be, there needs to be regulation. And I expect my government to do that, to protect my neighborhood, to protect my interests. And I would like to share this letter from somebody who lives in our community who's really impacted by this.
So my name is Robin Spalding, and I'm reading this on behalf of Christy Davis, who could not be here today. And I live in the same neighborhood in Cascade. Good evening. I have been a resident of the UPass community for over 18 years. In that time, I put 3 kids through the UPass Elementary School, bartended, waitressed, and worked as a midwife for many local families in the area. Cascade is not simply a place to live, it is a home in every sense of the word. But that has changed. The house next to us was remodeled and became a VRBO. It hosts 22 people that have an outdoor swimming pool. Our quiet, nature-loving, close-knit, single-family home community has effectively had an unregulated Holiday Inn dumped into the middle. The noise, traffic, and partying is unbearable. We have brought our complaints to the homeowners and they have proved utterly unwilling to work with us. They are making money hand over fist and don't care at all for the impact that they are having on the community around them. We have reached out to the county commissioner, the health department, the fire department, the sheriff, code enforcement, etc. There are no regulations on this type of business, and therefore none of these agencies have been able to offer any assistance. In fact, the sheriff's department refuses to respond to any of our complaints, will not let me file a complaint, and has gone so far as to send a deputy out to tell us to stop interfering with the VRBO's owners' ability to run their business. We have a decibel reader and exercise our rights to call when the noise is above county ordinance for extended periods of time. To be told by local law enforcement that noise ordinances are unenforceable and that we should not call them seems terribly skewed. What are the neighbors to these unregulated businesses supposed to do to assert their rights and maintain the peace? And so now, because of the community, I'm sorry. And so now, because of these unregulated, businesses has caused to our home life, we are moving. I'm leaving my beloved community, walking away from my favorite trails, saying goodbye to my cozy home and amazing neighbors. My heart is broken, but we can no longer bear living in a party zone while navigating the ugly bullying from the property owners. Thank you for your time. So this is an owner-occupied home.
I think I received a call from one of your neighbors about this the other day. I think it's the same property. And again, I think this is the reason why we're having this discussion is, how do you regulate, how do you do that type stuff? And if I could just address your question in regards to fair and equitable, I have an idea. And I shared it with my fellow assessors, and it didn't go over too well. And I'll tell you why, is when you're sitting there looking at proposing legislation, and as I mentioned to you, one of my major duties is to ensure fair and equitable valuation. Is what is fair and equitable? I agree with you, if somebody is operating a short-term rental or Airbnb, therein lies Airbnb. That's the term of bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast communities are basically providing the same service to the same customer as a bed and breakfast. So what I proposed, is just initial thought, and I said, you know what guys, I'm just going to throw this out there, and I just want to see what the assessor's thoughts are. And I think I probably got about 70% of them just shook their head no, 30% of them shook their head yes. But I will share with you the initial thought that I shared is, why don't we just leave the short-term rentals at the residential assessment rate and drop the bed and breakfast down to the residential assessment rate? That was an initial thought. And, it was one of those things where, to be fair and equitable, but at the same time, here's what I also thought about. What about hotels, motels? So, you sit there and you look at, my initial thought, I just wanted to start the conversation, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not proposing any bill, but I just wanted to start the conversation, and the thought process is, what about an idea is if you provide lodging, you're at the residential assessment rate. So, those are discussions that I think we need to have, because I'll tell you, there's some pros, there's some cons. Folks will sit there and say, you know what, that revenue will be lost, we want that revenue. But I will tell you guys here in El Paso County, it's not much of a revenue loss. Not whatsoever. When you sit there and you start looking at how many people am I going to have to hire to surf the internet all day long to try to find these types of properties. So now I'm sitting there hiring full-time employees, which our tax dollars pays their salary, pays their benefits, pays their retirement, things like that. So how much revenue is actually coming into the community? Really, it's going to end up being a wash. But these are conversations I want us to have, but I wanted to share with you, these are things that are going through my mind. These are conversations I've had with fellow assessors.
Something I'd like to speak to that is one of the important aspects of what I had to do is I had to go through the variance process if this property that's non-owner occupied is gonna run a commercial business in a residential neighborhood, a solution that I see is make them apply for a variance. And when there are problems that are unaddressed, and, you know, a homeowner who's lived in a community this long shouldn't be selling their house because nothing can be done about the VRBO across the street. That's a tragedy that somebody is losing their house, a place they love, because of a commercial business operating in a residential neighborhood. So put them up through the variance process, because I can tell you right now, that business would not get the support of the neighbors. But I fully recognize that there are people like me who care about what my house looks like, how it affects property values, what my neighbors think. I approached every single one of them and said, if you ever have a problem with what I do or something my guest does, call me, please. Because I want to hear about that. And I know that there are owners that are like that, and I know there are owners that are running this purely for the investment. They're nothing but driven by money. And how do we address that so people like this don't have to do, and then when that house sells, they become a VRBO?
You know, that is a good question. Hey, Julie, could you write that down? I'll get with Stan Vandenwerth on that. In regards to, there's a young lady right here who's had her arm up for like the
So
last half
actually, sorry, I'm gonna interrupt real quick, if everybody doesn't mind.
Yes,
Hi,
please
I'm
go.
Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
I have the toddler who's making everybody miserable tonight.
He needs to come over here with me.
Kid.
Yeah, no, he would absolutely love that. So I just wanted to get my thoughts in so I can get out of here and get out of everybody's noise disruption. So first off, I live in a neighborhood with at least 3 short-term rental properties. None of them are owner occupied. They're all, they own multiple properties, and they do this as a business. So first, you said it's not my job or the government's job to put business out of business. They're operating as a business. They are a business. I bought in a residential neighborhood to raise my toddler in a neighborhood with neighbors I know and trust, so my kid can run around and have fun and be safe. And that's not the case when I'm living next to a business. That's why I didn't buy downtown. That's why I didn't buy next to Garden of Gods. I bought in the middle of a neighborhood. But yet I'm living next to a business, in fact 3. And we have cars parked up and down the road, sometimes more than 10 per house. There's probably more people at the AirBNBs during the weekends than there are people living in my neighborhood. The house right behind me is an Airbnb. She advertises this 4-bedroom house for up to 20 people, which means it invites large parties. We've had volleyball teams, weddings, reunions, and like family gatherings that just are super noisy. They're on vacation, so it's not necessarily just on weekends that we're getting disrupted. It's weeknights, it's Mondays, it's Tuesdays, and I used to get up for work at 5 a.m. to get my kid ready. Meanwhile, I haven't been able to go to bed because of the neighbors, who aren't my neighbors. And I call the number, I call the owner of that home, and she doesn't get back to me until the next morning, which is against the regulation, first off. Or one time she said she's out of the country vacationing herself, so sorry she didn't get back to me. We've also had some of the renters using fireworks in the backyard of our neighborhood, called the police. I called the police about the noise. They never respond because they have better things to do with their time. So when you're talking about should they be charged as a business, I never call the police except for this, and they don't respond because they have better things to do. They obviously need more funding. They obviously need more people to respond to these things if that's how the city or the county is going to handle it. Second off, you mentioned the military members might want to rent their home as a short-term rental while they're deployed other places. We're a military family. Of the 3 to 3.5 years that we will be stationed here, my husband will be deployed for 60% of it. I will be by myself with my toddler, working a full-time job and living next to a business, and we put effort into not having that situation. Meanwhile, I have people moving in and out next to me that I don't know who they are, I can't trust, and I'm alone. And as for the senior citizens comment, my neighborhood is a custom-built home neighborhood that most of the residents are still elderly individuals who built those homes in the 70s. And a lot of them, their husbands have passed away, and they're single women. And they don't feel safe, not knowing their neighbors, when we have just tons of people and tons of parties and no avenue for enforcement or protection. Next, you talked about cost of living. If they're, running a business, should they be charged at a business rate? Of course they should. And that if their property gets valued as a business, and then so maybe the house behind me is $600,000 instead of $400,000, it doesn't mean it's going to sell for that. If they sell it as a residential property, it's going to be worth no more than mine, because I could go get a short-term rental license, and that doesn't make the value of my property more, because anyone can get one. So I don't think that's a concern. I don't understand, first off, why we're letting businesses into our residential neighborhoods. First off, it's one thing like the women that are saying that they rent out a room or a floor in their home. They are there. They see what's going on. They're able to respond. If I'm being bothered, they're getting bothered first, and they're going to put an end to it. But it's another thing, if they're not even there, they're not responsive, and they're running it as a business. She has like 4 of these things. And there's 3 on my street. No one's there. No one responds. And I'm not the only one from the community that feels this way. And listening to your speech, I just see you having a lot of sympathy for businesses, business owners, about how they shouldn't be taxed or they shouldn't be regulated. And that's not the case. If you want to run a bed and breakfast or a hotel, go run one. But let me be able to use my neighborhood for residential purposes.
Nicole, I think, first and foremost, as a former Marine, please tell your husband thank you for his service. And at the same time, I also recognize the importance that you serve as a military spouse, because I know, when I went overseas, when I was in Iraq and things like that, is the wife stayed home, and I think the job was harder for the military spouse than the military member, so thank you. But I will sit there and share with you is, I think what's important here is, yes, I did make the statement that I feel that government should not be putting businesses out of business. I don't think that should be the role of government, but I do feel the role of government is to protect private property rights, which are folks that are owning short-term rentals or Airbnbs, and also folks that are sitting there and they use it as a single-family residential property. That's why we're having this debate. But what I want to share with you is just to go back a little bit, and please take this away, is I'm trying to be as proactive as possible to start this dialogue, to have this communication. And just to share with you, I'm listening to you because the stuff that we share here in El Paso County is stuff that I'm going to be sharing at the state level. Because right now we're talking about a very old law that right now there's no definition in statute for Airbnb or short-term rentals. There's not. There is nothing in current Colorado statutes that defines this, which is right now the reason why we have current case law of owner-occupied. What if somebody basically says, it's not owner-occupied and they want to appeal? So those are things where I feel that this is a state matter that needs to be addressed. And I will tell you is maybe the state will come down and they will sit there and say, these are commercial properties. Then it's my job to educate the property owners here in El Paso County. If that were to come down, it's only fair to everybody to be educated. That way these business owners can make an informed decision of changing their business model. If they sit there going, you know what, I can't handle the taxes, am I going to sell the property or am I going to convert it from a short-term rental Airbnb to a long-term rental? I feel that all citizens in El Paso County, afford that opportunity. But the process that we're starting today is the communication piece, the education piece. And just see where we go, because what I don't want to have happen, and I mentioned this, there is a lot of discussion at the state level regarding these types of properties. And I mentioned one right now through CCI, which is the Gunnison County Assessor or County Commissioner, who's looking at if you sit there and you rent or lease that property for a total of 60 days, not consecutive, 60 days, you are deemed commercial. But again, what you have to sit there and look at is my job as your county assessor is how do I verify that? So there's
Well, if they have a license for a short-term rental, then I think that's pretty good verification that they're running a short-term rental. And if they're going to stop, they should turn in their license.
Right, you bring up a very good point, and I'll share with you, is right now there are some municipalities, City of Colorado Springs, that is requiring licensing. I think they're probably only getting maybe 75% of them. But I'm not the City of Colorado Springs assessor, I'm the El Paso County assessor. So what about the properties that are operating short-term rental Airbnbs in Black Forest, Monument, Up the Pass, things like that? So the county is not requiring that.
Yeah, but instead of trying to be super fair to people who are running these businesses, if it's obvious that they're running one, then I think it's pretty obvious the rule applies. I don't think that you can say, well, I can't catch everybody, so let's not do anything. Or let's just inform people of the rules. Like, some county cities are making efforts to make these things register to protect their residents, and you need to be able to take that data and apply it to the law. And just one second, because I'm going to get him out of here.
No, it's okay.
Just as annoying as this was listening to him, I just want everybody to remember the reason we're here is this is a community issue. Like, yes, this is law, yes, this is taxes, but this is my home. This is my residential neighborhood. This is my kid. He makes noise in this meeting because it is basically a town hall for families because you're talking about residential neighborhoods. Now I'm going to hand this off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, we have 30 minutes before we need to get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
First, I want everybody to know you can call 411 and find out who your legislators are because it's clear that this is going to require legislation. And I really thank you for all the information you shared. I thought it was on forum, but not as much as I thought. I live in an older neighborhood. I'm on the board of my older neighborhood. On my street, we have 2 AirBNBs, which are not owner occupied. So I want everybody to make sure that there's a distinctive difference between the 2. And if you have a non-owner occupied house on your street, they are not a neighbor. They are not a neighbor. And as someone who believes in community and neighborhood, an absentee owner of an Airbnb is not a neighbor. I spent a sabbatical recently in Northern California where this is much more of an issue. And one of the things you need to be aware of, we're in the press for being the #1 destination in the country. Guess what that's happening? This has already happened in California. The homes, the affordable homes in Sonoma, Napa and Marin County are being bought up by the Chinese, by the Saudi Arabians, by people who don't live in the state, who don't live in the community, as an investment opportunity. Those are not neighbors. They are not neighbors. They do not belong in neighborhoods. There's a film that you can get in the library at UCCS that's called Nobody Home. It's about what the tragedy of Aspen, where most of the homes is a little bit different, are owned by absentee landlords who aren't there. You may be the only year-round resident on your block. It does not make for community. Non-owner occupied Airbnbs are not neighborhoods that contribute nothing to the community. I'm counting on my organization, my neighborhood organization, of which I'm both a member and a neighborhood member, KONO, to speak up for neighborhoods and not commercial businesses in neighborhoods. Thanks again.
My name is Scott Otto. I own a few vacation rentals, I think it's important to know that we've done a lot of things to actually help the community. This is in Green Mountain Falls. So the properties that we bought were pretty much run down, and we renovated them, and we're generating tax dollars for Green Mountain Falls. And I think what everybody fails to take into account is that most communities actually go through a process where you actually have to ask the neighbors, hey, is this something that you're okay with? And there's actually things that are put in place to prevent people from having VRBOs that are irresponsible. So if they're parking on the grass or doing things like this, they can actually take back the license that they give you. So it's not just some general thing that actually happens, and I think people here need to understand that. We go through a stringent process where we have to be evaluated every year. So it's just not like somebody's like, well, you know, they're taking over the community, and I think every place has to be evaluated on a per home basis. And there's pardon me? Well, that's the city of Green Mountain Falls does. And so what they do is if you get calls from the neighbor, or if you're irresponsible, so not everybody should be penalized because they are irresponsible owners in some areas. And so for somebody to say, well,
maybe we shouldn't allow this in our community just because, this person is doing that. Obviously, doesn't work for everybody because we pay a lot of tax dollars. We invest a lot of times. In fact, me and my wife and our families, we're committed to our neighborhoods, and we invest a lot into the community. So actually, there's a process, and it should be on a per owner basis. And if somebody's being irresponsible, then obviously that should be the process. But I think that is in place. So to make some generalization that, well, we shouldn't have vacation rentals because these things are happening isn't really a fair thing to happen.
In fact, I just sit there and I'll share with you, the first thing that came to mind when you shared that is, I don't think that's any different than a liquor license. When you sit there and you have a restaurant or a liquor store that goes for a liquor license, they're requesting permission to get that liquor license. And there's a process they go through. And again, my office has nothing to do with this, but it's the first thing that came to mind when you shared your story. And if they violate the rules of that liquor license, they lose that license. And it sounds like a lot of what is going on. But again, this is the reason why I really am glad we're having this dialogue, because just sitting there, just having these conversations, a lot of great ideas are coming up that we can share with all of our elected officials.
Who do we get to enforce this? That's what I want to know. I've filed 15 to 20 complaints, and nobody does anything about it.
We sit here listening to all of you tell us what a great thing this is for you, but you're getting all the income. What about those of us that have to tolerate all this, that no longer can be safe in our homes? We come home in the evening and there's a 10-foot bonfire going on across the street from us in Black Forest. We burned 6 years ago. These are not people that live here that have any concern about what happens to our home. They will pack their suitcase and they will go home and our forests will burn. We have no say. It takes 2 years to get this. We're dealing with a code enforcement. These homes are being in total violation. 2 years, nothing's been done. And now you want to give it to the state legislature, and you don't want to deal with it yourself. It should be on a county level. You need to be looking at what's happening in our forest. I'm his next door neighbor. We live directly across the street from this house. We have 15 cars parked in a parking space for 3. They advertise 26 people in a 6-bedroom home.
Well,
no owner lives there.
Well, ma'am, let me define my job as county assessor. I'm not code enforcement, I'm not land use, and I'm not sheriff Bill Elder.
But you don't even want to tax them.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. So no, this right here again is a state matter, because if you go back to what I shared an hour and a half ago, and I just want to share this with you, is the county assessors, 64 county assessors are not even being fair and equitable throughout the state. And here's the reason why. You have tasked me with the job of discovery, listing, classifying, and value all taxable and exempt property in accordance with Colorado law. The concern I have is looking right now, everybody in this room, I cannot guarantee discovering these types of properties. In addition to that, the problem that we have is, I go back to the assessment date. If I were to sit there and change these properties to non-residential, a property owner can come on in once they get the notice of value and say, Steve, I was living in this as of January 1st. And by law, I would have to convert it right back to residential. There's a loophole. This is the reason why I'm sharing with you is these are conversations that we need to have, because you know what? Short-term rental AirBNB property owners are going to figure it out and it's right on the notice of value going, you're being valued as the assessment date January 1st, and if they come in going on January 1st, I was living there. And so I have to value that property as residential for that entire year. What I try to share with you, one of which is my concerns, 2, what is current Colorado law, and how things need to be changed, because as Welling alluded to, this is a business that we're not going to be able to stop. It's a new thing like the internet in the early 2000s. This is coming, but we have to sit there, and when I'm talking about the valuation and classification of property, I need to ensure that I can sit there and support that value because I do not want to be sued, and I could be sued. So,
Sure, but I don't keep losing property value because I bought a house in an equestrian subdivision for horses. Half the time I can't even get my horse trailer out of my driveway anymore because there's cars lined everywhere and parties across the street.
well, and as
I'm losing property value. I can't even use my home anymore and enjoy it.
well, you know what?
And my property values keep going up. And if I tried to sell, I personally wouldn't buy that house. I don't want to live across the street from a motel.
Yeah. I completely understand. But as I mentioned, some time ago, and hopefully you got one of those PowerPoint presentations. I put quite a few out on the table. Ma'am, my cell phone's on there. And you can call me, you can text me, and if you have a concern, and sir, you as well over there, it's like, who's enforcing this? And again, that's not my statutory requirement, but I do know the folks that are in charge of that, and I will put you in contact with the individuals whose name is on that office. So I open that up to everybody, and as your elected official, I'm like, you should be able to contact me on the cell phone or text message me, so I welcome that.
Hi, I'm a horrible public speaker, so sorry. I just wanted to say I really enjoyed hearing both sides. It's amazing how much you can learn when you think you are on one side and you hear from other people. I found that, I'm agreeing with a lot of the people who are having troubles with people not living in the homes. I happen to live in the home that I rent. And all I was going to say is that I'm a military spouse, and being that we could move at any time, we're kind of doing AirBNB as a very short term for me to do AirBNB. It allowed me to go back to college and to put my kids in a school that I felt safe with them being, because we weren't in a great district. So I just wanted to say that I feel like it's, we keep our property up, we make gardens, we try to speak with our neighbors and make sure that everybody's comfortable with what we're doing. And I think this conversation is exactly what needs to be happening, because we don't want to segregate ourselves from each other on either side. Because for me, it's kind of been a lifesaver to be able to not have to work having 2 little kids, getting them from place to place. And I don't plan on doing it forever, but it's been a nice temporary jumping off point. But if all of a sudden our taxes were to jump up, I feel like I would have to take my kids out of the schools I've put them in. So how much notice would they give us if something like that was to happen?
That is a very good question, and thank you for asking that. But if I could just make a statement, folks, please remember why we're here. We all care about our community. If you're a property owner or stakeholder, or actually a property owner that has a couple of these next to you, I know everybody is very emotional about this topic. I've been watching everything that's happened in the city of Colorado Springs. But here's the thing. Right now what we need to do is agree to disagree, and let's have a civil conversation. And, come up with some ideas as we move forward when it comes to value and classifying these type of properties. So the question was, let's say legislation does not change. And, basically you have to comply with the statute. Is when are you looking at implementing this if legislation doesn't change? So we're probably looking at the soonest would be 2021 with taxes payable 2022. And again, that is a huge education piece that I need to have with these property owners. And the reason why, as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, I think it's only fair when they're looking at their taxes going from $1,600 to $6,500, going from residential to non-residential, and also addressing some of the concerns that I highlighted in the presentation, is I feel they should have made an informed decision of going, maybe I need to change my business model. Maybe I need to go ahead and convert it to long-term rental and things like that. But folks, here's what I want to share with you. Again, this is not an El Paso County matter. This is a state of Colorado matter. All 64 county assessors are dealing with the same thing here. I'm not going to sit there and brag. I am going to brag about my staff, but I'm not going to brag about me. But I will tell you right now, many assessors aren't having these types of forums. They're not having these kind of conversations with their property owners. I will guarantee you that. I can probably count on one hand how many assessors are getting in front of the property owners and having this dialogue. So, again, let's all just, agree to disagree. As I mentioned, El Paso County is not moving forward. There's a lot of homework that needs to be done because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of loopholes in the Colorado law, and we need to have, and I tell you, I've seen bills go into the meat grinder, and the sausage that comes out the back end could really harm a lot of property owners. I have seen it. And that basically the intent of what the initial bill was and what came out is something completely different. Because these conversations we're having right now is how many representatives are very familiar with real estate, property taxes, property rights? Not many of them. So, and again, that's why you elected me, was to protect your property rights and ensure fair and equitable valuation. But again, guys, we're just having some dialogue and we're getting a lot of great ideas. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Gay Hassel, and I do own short-term rental property. It is a summer cabin, so I don't have the option of just flipping it over to monthly rental. And like I said, it's only during the summer months, so I can't really live there. So my question is, if this is going to be discussed at the state level and decided at the state level, who do I need to talk to? I mean, it sounds like right now the option is either 77% or 29%. I mean, is there anything else that can be proposed? Who do we need to get in touch with about that?
That is a very good question. So the question was, who is the legislature I need to talk to within my district? And according to my presentation, right now we have two assessment rates. Residential is at 7.15% and non-residential is at 29%. There's actually discussion of coming up with a new resident or a new rate for lodging. The problem with that is our amendment, the Gallagher Amendment. The Gallagher Amendment, that 55-45 split that I shared with you. So there's some things there, but I will tell you is, I don't want to get into lawyerese type stuff. This is why I got Steve over here to help me out quite a bit. But it may be an opportunity where it is not a constitutional amendment, but where it's a statute where the state legislature can sit there and look at doing that. But that was part of the conversation as well, is coming up with a different assessment rate for lodging, besides the 29% or the 7.15%.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'm sorry, somebody... It does make a lot of sense. And I tell you is, I think many property owners and also, folks, living next to these are probably sitting there going, okay, they're paying above 7.15%, but they're not paying the 29%. So, and again, El Paso County, I feel, here's the reason why I'm having these meet and greets. Anybody want to try to guess, and this is just an assumption, how many short-term rentals, AirBNBs, do you guys think we have in El Paso County? I'm estimating between 3,000 and 3,500 in El Paso County. Not City of Colorado Springs, El Paso County as a whole. I'm estimating between 3,000 to 3,500. That's quite a bit. And what I want you guys to focus on too is the key things that I shared with you is this. El Paso County is the largest county when it comes to parcel size and almost now population. So who in the world is on social media letting the secret out that this is a great community? Please stop. We got a lot of people moving here. But what I'm saying is I really feel as your elected official, as your assessor, I have no problem picking up a banner and running with it at the state level to make sure everything is fair and equitable here in El Paso County. I feel we should not have stuff shoved down our throat. We should have a say-so up at the House. And we got a very large say-so up at the House regarding this matter. So the other thing is I don't feel Denver or the mountain communities should be dictating to El Paso County. That's how I feel. Oh, I did bring that up.
Most of these homeowners have homeowners insurance. They don't have commercial insurance.
Right. I brought that up. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Steve, I'm Greg. I live in Monument. And
Greg, how are you, man?
Really, I'm good. Thanks a lot for having these meetings. It's great. Real informative.
If you want to be popular, don't run for assessor.
Absolutely. I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
What are the rules, or are there any rules or regulations that the county has for Airbnb, RVs, or camper trailers? And the other question is, do you know of any HOAs that are changing their covenants to deal with short-term rentals?
So the first question is, am I aware of any county rules regarding short-term rentals, Airbnbs, RVs, and fifth-wheel trailers, things like that? To answer your question, yes, I am aware of land use codes regarding trailers, RVs, and things like that. I am not aware, Steve, am I correct? There's nothing regarding short-term rentals, Airbnbs. So, thanks, Mayor.
We had heard that Paso County passed something last year that you could no longer Airbnb a camper trailer RV. So that's why we looked at the website.
That's part of the city. So what you're talking about is the city, not the county. Yeah. So right now, and I'm looking over at Steve, I'm going, am I correct in this thing? So right now, there is nothing on the books as far as with planning and development in regards to short-term rentals, Airbnbs. But again, I think this is a discussion that your county government needs to start having. And, you know, right along with your county commissioners as well. So the other question, and I apologize, what was the second one?
HOAs dealing with short-term rentals?
Yep, yes. I will tell you, I have, over the last month and a half, I received probably 3 phone calls from property owners that are retrieving the historic documents through the clerk recorder, the covenants. They have not had an active HOA for years and years and years. They want to go ahead and basically reintroduce the HOA. They're, you know, basically looking up the old covenants. And the thing is when they do that, and what I've been educating folks on, is if you're looking to do that, you have to take it to the vote of the neighbors within that, you know, the old HOA within that boundary. So to answer your question, yes, I have heard from several folks where they're sitting there doing the research right now in regards to enforcing old covenants that have been filed away some time ago. Yes, sir.
I'm a VRB owner. I have one on North Nevada. I've had it for 10 years. And first of all, thank you for your introduction because it answered a lot of my questions. I came here to find out the impact of the possible increase in property taxes. And I think that we have 2 different forums here. And I suggest that the people that are complaining about bad VRB owners take this up with their local municipalities. And I'm sorry that there are people that abuse these neighborhoods like that. I'm licensed for 6. I'm in a residential neighborhood. Just want to make a comment. I have long-term rentals in my neighborhood that the properties are run down, the grass is not mowed, the roofs are not maintained, the bushes aren't trimmed. That to me affects my property value. I work very hard to keep my property maintained because if I don't, inside and out, I won't have any customers. So I'm constantly getting feedback from my neighbors. If I ever have any issues, then they will let me know and I address them. Specifically about and maybe these specifics these are premature, but if this is implemented, is there any way to do a phase-in, whether you don't just jump from 7% to 29%? Is there a possibility of a phase-in over a period of time? And also, will everybody be started at the same time so there will be equality of rental rates and things like that? Do you know what I mean? Will all these properties be evaluated, assessed, and then start date is January 1, 2021-22? My last question was, if we are deemed commercial, are we going to have to comply with commercial codes? I just went through a process for the city of Colorado Springs where they had a self-inspection and the licensing for, and I don't know how many people they've reached, but I'd like to see that be completed before any commercial decisions are made.
You know, I really like your idea. when you're sitting there talking about a phased-in approach, I think that's exactly how we're doing it here in El Paso County, is having these conversations, is being proactive, not reactive. And I think that might be something that many assessors, and I don't want to speak for the other 63 county assessors, I'll let Colt, with him up in Teller County, what his thoughts are. But when you're looking at a phased-in approach and incrementally build on up, and that way it's fair and equitable for everybody on rates and things like that, I think that's a great comment. It's something that, to be discussed. Now, when it comes to, if you go to non-residential commercial, do you have to comply? And again, that comes down to land use, and it comes down to City of Colorado Springs, with their planning and stuff like that. But I will tell you, a lot of times, they go off the assessor's website, and if it's at non-residential, then you have to comply with the commercial. And this is where we come in, as we mentioned, is utility rates change because you're paying the commercial rate, homeowners insurance and things like that, because they go off that public website. I really like your idea. Thank you for sharing. Cole, what do you think of that one? Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. I think there's merit in reviewing that idea. That's why I'm glad Mr. Schleicher's had these meetings and the future meetings. I think there's also merit in looking at maybe at the government and how the state is taxed. That's a whole other issue. That's a constitutional amendment. And that's maybe at the crux of this. And there's many different ideas to look at how properties, neighborhoods are looked at. And maybe there's going to be neighborhoods out there that don't allow the AirBNBs. I don't know how that's going to work out. And maybe there should be neighborhoods strictly for the AirBNBs. We look at the marketplace and we want to be fair and equitable. The issue down here is much larger than it is in our small county, Teller County. I'm here to learn and listen and then to take away the information you guys are talking about. Teller County is part of this community too, and we are impacted. So we're trying to learn, and we want to be fair on all sides of the aisles here, and that's what our job is. By the way, this is one very, very good assessor here. You have Steve Schleicher, and I think he's doing a great job.
Now I owe him $20.
I just want to know, you say that El Paso County is not moving ahead. What exactly are you not moving ahead on?
So right now, I'm not moving ahead and reclassifying these properties from residential to non-residential. And just as I shared and Colt alluded to, there's many concerns, and I shared with many, and I just go over a couple of them, is the lending. And again, many will sit there and say, well, that's not my problem. They got into this business, they should be aware of that. However, this is the reason for the education piece, because you know what, many of these property owners don't know what we learned today. Secondly, is right now, we have an assessment date of January 1st. And if I were to convert these properties to non-residential and somebody were to appeal that, and I cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt through the appeal process that they were not owner occupied, I have to convert it back to residential. So what I've been sharing with you guys is there is a loophole currently, and this is what we need to work on. Some may sit there and say, Steve, get a backbone. Do what you need to do in El Paso County. However, the reason why I say this is a state issue is because of the loophole. A lot of different things are going on. And again, I feel we need to have these conversations. And right now, believe it or not, in the last 2 hours, has anybody else learned a lot more about this as well as I?
Steve, so we don't have to worry about anything happening this
No.
January 1st?
No.
End of story.
End of story.
We can be long-term rental, short-term rental, upside down, whatever.
End of story.
And you don't even know, you don't really foresee anything at this point.
So I will share with you guys this, please. I'll tell you this. This is how important this topic is to me. Is anybody aware of Ted Robertson with KRDO? Some guys, this is an important topic. Ted Robertson and KRDO actually is kind enough. Every month we're going to do a podcast on this topic. So you can actually go on KRDO, pull up, you can do a search, or you go into Ted Robertson. So next week, I'm actually going to be talking on KRDO radio and talking about this. The reason why this is important, because there are things that you just brought up and we're bringing up, is I shared with you in the early stages of this presentation, I'm going to have my ears to the ground. If there's any type of legislation that's coming up, I am going to be putting it on the assessor's website. I will also share it on KRDO. Communication is key. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tam, and I've only lived in Colorado Springs since 1954. I went to school in Colorado Springs. My children.
What school?
I went to Whitefield, North, and Palmer.
Me too.
And my children went to school in Colorado Springs, and I have an Airbnb. And surprisingly, the liquor store and the tattoo parlor and all the apartment homes that have been converted to apartments on my street have never complained about me. I happen to be Airbnb Plus, which is the top of the line Airbnb. Today, I washed and ironed 12 pillowcases, the sheets for all the beds in the house, there aren't that many, and I also always wash the blankets on the beds between every single time I rent it for the different guests. I have very high standards. I resent being lumped in by the people who aren't abiding by them. I have people, I'm in my garden around the house every day. I have people constantly walk by the house and tell me I have the nicest house and the nicest garden on the block. I am helping property values on my street. And I believe, and the only reason I can keep my home and keep improving my home is because I can do short-term rentals. I have short-term rental insurance. I specifically bought short-term rental insurance.
Yeah. Folks, so it's almost 7:30, so we have time for 2 more questions.
There's something that I think is super important to address.
I can't hear you, sorry.
We've owned vacation rentals in the town of Green Mountain Falls, and it's been a wonderful thing. In fact, a lot of our families go on vacation there when they're not rented, but there's a simple fact. I think the problem is that there's a lot of people that really are not playing by the rules. And so we're paying our taxes like everybody else, and I think that's where the real problem exists. It's not that we're not paying enough taxes, it's the simple fact that other people are not paying their taxes. And so we play by the rules. We made sure that we've been, great neighbors to the people around us. But I think that's one thing that really needs to be more of the concern than raising taxes on the people that are being honest about things. Is about trying to find and police the people that are having these vacation rentals that aren't paying their taxes, because most oftentimes they're the people that aren't doing things the way they should be.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Yeah. It seems like tonight we've really talked about 2 different things. We've talked
I tried to stick to one.
We've talked about taxation, which is great, and that's what I want to talk about. And then we've got people that are at disagreements with the use of Airbnbs in general, and especially non-homeowner occupied Airbnbs. We are a homeowner occupied Airbnb, and we're scared to death that we're going to have the legislature take a broad brush approach to the issue and tax us 4 times as much as we are now, which would effectively put us out of business. But we have struggled ourselves to keep our property values up, and we have a very attractive place. We've never had any complaints from any neighbors or anything of that sort. We would have had hundreds of people as our guests, 2 people at a time, and we've been operating since 2011, and during that time we've had no complaints. But one of the things that is of concern to us is that the legislature is going to overturn the court order and have something different. And I'm wondering if you, with your ear closer to the ground than ours is, have any idea of what specific legislation is being contemplated with regard to homeowner occupied Airbnbs?
So in regards to the question of homeowner occupied VRBOs, short-term rentals, sir, I have not. I think that would be a mighty task to try to challenge the appellate court. But I will tell you right now, it would not surprise me if somebody in the legislature would try to challenge that. But as your county assessor, I take that, as I promised to you and everybody in this room, in the community, is I will share on the website anything that comes down. And I think everybody knows my website, the county assessor's website. My picture's on the front page. If you print that off and hang it in the garage, it will scare away every rodent known to man. So that way you don't have to have work, and I'm telling you, it will. But I will sit there and push that. I will also push the information on social media. I will also be pushing the information on KRDO. I have a very good rapport with a lot of the media here in town. You know, with Pam Zubek with The Independent, Rachel Riley with The Gazette. Folks, I will tell you, I will bust, and excuse the way I say this, but I'm just being very endearing, I will bust my ass to get that information out there to you. So, as mentioned, I feel I need to assist in removing government red tape and get you in contact with the right people. And so, you know, if that is with a county commissioner, if that is with a department head, and, you know, just sit there and just say, and push, help you push that. You know, my staff will sit there and tell you, is very rarely will I pull the elected official card, but when I do, it's necessary. And I'll be more than happy to pull the elected official card going, hey, we need to look into this and what's going on, you know, with planning and land use and code enforcement and things like that, especially in El Paso County where you're not within the city. But folks, I tell you what, it's 7:30 and I know security, well, none of us want to be locked into the garage. But I will tell you this, I want to sincerely thank everybody that came. I know you gave up some time, but I love the discussion, and please, you know, share with your neighbors if you think they might get something from it. But folks, thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you.